understanding how projective we are in terms of what comes out of our mouths. Okay, so I have a chapter in Living A Course in Miracles, which is called Word Fasting, the Miracle Diet. And what I suggest in there is that we become very, very conscious. Actually, the word conscious is not the right word in terms of the Course. The right word in terms of the Course is aware. But become very, very aware of everything, of what our thoughts are. Very often the Course is going to ask, watch your thoughts. You know, watch your thoughts. This is a very frequent phrase that comes up. Or look at what you're doing, right? And I want to start with a quote from the Course. It says, and so we start our journey beyond words by concentrating first on what impedes your progress still. So we really want to begin by looking at what's the whole Course about in the beginning? Removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. So it would be really helpful if we knew what the blocks were. Because if we knew what the blocks were, then that would make it a little bit easier for us to set the block aside. But something has to happen to increase our level of awareness so that we know what the blocks are. So we already know projection makes perception, and if you think about it, every word is a projection. It's coming, out of the void into the world, right? Another quote from the Course is, the body acts wrongly only when it responds to misthought. So we're trying to get the right thought so that we don't have the misthought. The misthought would be the non-creative or insane thought. And we know that words, of course, says are symbols of symbols, twice removed from reality. There's another point in the Course where it says that God does not understand words. God doesn't understand Spanish or Portuguese or English or German or, it's not about words. Because words too are forms. They're forms of things that we have made up in this world in order for us to communicate. And we need the words. Because without the words, we'd be really, really stuck, right? So we need the words, but really what God hears and what God knows is not the words. He knows the words of the heart, so to speak, which are not words. Again, to quote the Course, would you know how many times you merely thought you were right without ever realizing that you're wrong? We think that we're right. That's a part of the belief system. Right? We think that how many times do we think that you're right without even realizing that you're wrong? So what I want to do is provide some really a practical suggestion. And the practical suggestion is that there are certain words that you can completely eliminate from your vocabulary and never use them as a form of projection. I mean, they never come out of the mouth. These words will never, because if they come out of the mouth, then it's really, it involves some kind of misperception. Otherwise, it wouldn't even appear there, right? Again, the Course says, every choice you make establishes your own identity as you will see it and believe it. So this is, we're going, the first choice is a choice that happens in the mind. Then the question is, does this thought also go to the tongue? Right? Does it get, and there's actually this little moment in there when we think about, am I going to say this? Is it going to come out, or is it not going to come out? And of course, sometimes there's very little milliseconds in there between the thought and the the expression of the thought. The Course is asking us to think about what you're doing. One evening, years and years ago, when our daughter was an adolescent, probably around 13 or 14 years old, she said something really awful to her mom. And I don't remember what it was, but it was one of those really, I hate you, I hope you die, kind of teenage, adolescent things, And the minute she said it, she followed it up with, I didn't think that! And it was like, I didn't think it. Well, and that's true. She didn't think it. She wasn't thinking when she said that, right? Because if she loves her mom, very, very much, So this is just not something that she would have said if in her right, that did not come from her right mind, right? It came from the wrong mind. Now, fortunately, my mother didn't get upset about it. Unfortunately, I happened to be there at the time. I didn't get upset about it either. And if we'd, you can't talk to me that way. Well, now we got a problem, right? But there's not a problem unless you see the problem. If you see the problem, then you got a problem. But it wasn't a problem, because we just let it go. Again, the quote, the Course says, watch your mind carefully for any belief. This is there. And that hinders its accomplishment, and step away from them. So we see the thought, but then we step away from the thought. We don't entertain, we don't encourage the thought. We don't get into the thought. Right? Jesus in the Gospel says, it's not what you put in your mouth that defiles you. It's what comes out of your mouth that defiles you. So we're just looking at what comes out of the mouth. So we're going to talk about doing a diet. The diet. What do you do when you do a diet? What you do when you do a diet is that you eliminate certain kinds of foods. Let's say we'll cut out sugars and fats and starches or something like that. We're going to eliminate. You on a monetary diet, you've overspent, then you got to go on a monetary diet to, don't spend so much for a while until things get more in balance, or any kind of a diet sort of thing that actually, most of our problems and come in the ego sense because we overdo something, we overeat, we overspend, we overreact, we overplay, whatever, and then to come back to balance again, you got to go the other way with it for a while, right? Let me read a passage from the Course here again. This is, sometimes the sin can be repeated over and over without obvious distressing results, but without its loss of appeal. And suddenly you change its status from a sin to a mistake. Now you will not repeat it, you will merely stop and let it go, unless the guilt remains. So the thing is to stop and to let it go. And again from the Course is, the more you approach the center of his thought systems, the clearer the light becomes. Okay, a German mystic named Henry Suess, who lived in the 13th century, once said, I have often repented of having spoken, but I have never repented of having remained silent. And we can probably all say, I've often repented of having spoken, but I've never repented of having stayed to hold the tongue, right? And I read an article in Science of Mind magazine a couple years ago by a guy named Jan Dongas, called "You Are What You Say." And he did this doctoral dissertation study on what people said by sneakily recording conversations, like in restaurants and stuff like that, and then playing back to see what words got repeated, even like little words, right? And one of them was the frequency with which words came up, especially the frequency with which the word I, for example, came up. All right, so if this is a really frequent kind of thing, then obviously we're looking at why the need for the frequency on this. It's not, you can't avoid using the word, but you can notice the frequency with which it gets used, right? So every word is a statement. The first cry of a baby coming out of the womb is a statement in the world. It says something. I was so comfortable and warm, and now it's a light and sound and all this other stuff is going on around me, right? What's the first job that was given to Adam? He had to name things, right? So we are namers. Isn't it nice the way people bow when they walk in front of me? I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that. So we're named. When you start school, what's the first thing you do? You learn words, you begin to learn. And by the way, you know what the first word, this is interesting, that you might well have learned in school? I looked it up. How many, if you went to school during the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, or even into the 60s, you started off with a book called Fun with Dick and Jane. All right? Well, what's the first word in Fun with Dick and Jane? It's close. It's look.
Oh,
Look. And it's not only that, it's interesting what the next three words are. Look up, up, up. Isn't that interesting? Look up. Dick said, look up, Jane, and Sally, and Spot, see, Spot, right. Well, it's in the history. We start off with the words, and it's just interesting. The look happens to be the one. I remember actually being a little excited about thinking that I could read. You know, the first time that the reading was actually beginning to happen. When you take a class in high school biology, what is the first thing you do? You learn the parts of a frog or the parts of a flower, or we label things, right? We label. We are labelers. Shankara, who is the founder of the Vedanta system of Hindu, says, this universe superimposed upon God is nothing but a name. The universe superimposed upon God is nothing but a name, right? So it's a name. We're naming things. And then, you know, at first children don't have any language, so there's a name, but they don't know the name. But then they identify, then we learn that the name means this body. And now if the name is insulted, then the body gets upset about it. But that has to be a learned process that comes along the way. So I've come up with a bunch of names and names, that I said, you just never say this and you'll feel much, much better. I have two categories actually. One category is category of things you can totally eliminate from your diet. Never say this again, you'll feel much better. There's a second set that you can eliminate, but you can cut back on the quantity of, and by cutting back on the quantity, you'll also feel much better. And I'll put these like in little categories and illustrate each category. So the first one that we'll start with is profanities. Now, I'm assuming you don't do profanities. Damn it to hell. Really? Projection makes perception, right? So what am I projecting? And along with profanities, vulgarities. And we know what vulgarities are. Pisses me off. Oh shit. Right. These are vulgarities. And once I took when I was starting to date a new lady many years ago, I took her to the church where I was serving as a minister, and we would have discussions about the sermon after the fellowship hour each time, and I've noticed that she kept talking about how things pissed her off during Sunday school. And I just sort of pointed out driving home in the car that day, do you know how many times you said piss me off during Sunday school? You understand what I mean by vulgarities. I taught from 2000 to 2008 at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, and I remember sitting in the cafeteria one day listening, not intentionally, but not being able to avoid hearing the conversation of students at the next table, and it was a group of boys, and they only had one word. It was the adjective for everything, right? Good things and bad things, and but there was only one adjective, and we all know what it was. All right. This next category would be name calling. So by name calling, I mean words like stupid, idiotic, ridiculous, absurd, insane. That's what we're saying. This is stupid, this is idiotic, ridiculous, absurd, insane. There's a line in the Course where it says, would you condemn your brother or be free of them, free of the condemnation? There's another group I call the dis words. By dis, I mean, when I taught at Sing Sing during the 80s, I noticed that one of the worst things that one guy could have done to him by another guy was, hey, he dissed me. He dissed me, man. You know, he dissed me. Disrespected me. Everybody wants to be respected. Did you ever say that you were disappointed about something? Okay, so there's only one way to ever be disappointed about anything. You would have to have an appointment. So if you have an appointment, then you can be disappointed. But you made the appointment, so you can be disappointed. We actually like to be disappointed, because then that shows that somebody else has screwed up somewhere along the way, right? Somebody who knew about my talking about this gave me a little plaque, was just a nice picture of a Cocker Spaniel dog's face, and underneath it says, blessed are those who expect nothing, for they shall not be disappointed. Okay. So there's a lot of other disses, disillusioned, disenchanted, all of which would imply that you were enchanted in the first place, all right? Pardon? Disappear. Yeah, please disappear. What you really want to watch are really heavily judgmental words. One good diss that's a very heavily judgmental word is disgusting. I heard a very popular speaker on the tape one day say that something was disgusting. And I just thought, what? That's a really heavy word. Actually, disgusting, I looked up the root of all these words. It was kind of fun doing that, and the etymologies. Disgusting, irked, and vulgar all are guttural things. They all come from the gut. Disgusting. You know, it irks. I had a friend once on the phone just kept saying, it just irks the hell out of me. And that's like, it's irking the hell out. The hell is being irked out somehow, you know, it's like thrown up. Oh, God. So well, anyhow, you understand what I mean, but see, sometimes we take this literally. Words really affect how we feel. Literally how we feel. When we can use phrases that pain in the ass and that sort of stuff that really describe that's what we're really feeling. Right? All right. So disgusting. In other words, like it's going to be uncouth, appalling, horrendous, inexcusable, atrocious. All similar words. And I need a $10 bill before I can go ahead. I'm really serious about this. I have to have a $10 bill before I can. I need a 10. It's got to be a 10. I have to have a $10 bill before I can go ahead. Barry's got a $10 bill. You got a $10 bill? No, I need 10. Come on. Oh, I got it. Thank you. Okay. Now I can go ahead.
I got a lot more.
Oh, he's got a lot more. I remember that, Barry. You going to dinner with us tonight, Barry? Whose picture's on $10 bill? Hamilton. All right. So who was Alexander Hamilton? Secretary of the Treasury, right? First Secretary of the Treasury, right? So you probably know that he was killed in a duel by Aaron Burr. All right. Did you know that it was over a word?
Despicable.
Yes, it was despicable. The word was despicable. Actually, the root of the word despicable means it's spectacle, so it's unpleasant to the eye, literally, right? Something that's despicable, it's unpleasant to the eye, right? So what happened was that Aaron Burr said that something that Alexander Hamilton had done was despicable. I imagine this going on in Congress. And Alexander Hamilton turns back to Aaron Burr, like two little boys now, right? And he says, take it back. And Alexander Hamilton says, no, I am not going to take it back. And Aaron Burr says, okay, then I challenge you to a duel. So they dueled in Weehawken, New Jersey. And Aaron Burr killed Alexander Hamilton over the word despicable. And that is, as Daffy Duck used to say, despicable. I mean, this really brilliant man let himself get killed because he wouldn't take a word. It's just a word. You know, his son was also killed in a duel, by the way, right? Just to show the insanity. I think it was 1802 that happened. It was one of the things which led to the outlawing of dueling. It wasn't against the law at the time that they did it, but I think 1826 or something like that, there was a law passed forbidding dueling. Right? By the way, after that, Aaron Burr was persona non grata in Washington, D.C. And he ran off to Florida. That's what to get away from the whole thing, because nobody would have anything to do with him. I once heard a historian say that he thought of all of our founding fathers, of Washington and Jefferson and Adams and all of them, the one that probably had the highest IQ was Alexander Hamilton. Because he set up the banking system we still use in this country today. It actually worked pretty good until about 2008. Couple hundred years or so. Okay, so let's look at some other words now. Now, the next few words have to do with things like balance. So, did you ever say that you were upset about something? Yeah. Okay, there's only one way in the world you could ever be upset about anything, and that is that you have to have a setup. So you set it up. You set it up in your mind so you could get upset. Otherwise, you wouldn't be upset. So I'm studying Spanish, and I had to write a little essay for a Spanish class. And I wanted to use the word upset in Spanish, but I didn't know what it was. And there's more than one word that you can use for upset, but one of the words that you can use is the word trastornado. You got to roll that R. I think it's trastornado, right? Trastornado. Okay, so I look at the word trastornado, and the word tornado is inside that word. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? The word tornado's inside. Not only is it trastornado, tornado, but it's trastornado, and what it literally means, if you look in a Spanish etymology, is that a thunderstorm is coming through your mind. This thunderstorm is coming through, right? It's a trastornado. But you remember the little Joe Blipix from Little Abner, who used to walk around with a cloud over his head, and then, right? You want to walk around with a cloud over your head? That's a strange name, but his last name has no vowels in it. Joe Blipix, and it's very hard to say. How do you say something without a vowel in it, right? Okay, so upset, and a very similar word, these have to do with balance, is offended. So if something offends you, see here the real question is, who are you to be offended? I mean, what right do you have to be, what makes you think that you can be offended? You think Jesus got offended or upset with the disciples because they weren't getting it? Right? But off-ended, this literally, it knocked me off the end. It off-ended me, threw me off. Why would anything off-end you? Right? I want to read another passage from the Course here. It says, just a word, a little whisper that you do not like, a circumstance that suits you not, or an event that you did not anticipate upsets your world and hurls you into chaos. This is the Course. Truth is not frail. Illusions leave its perfectly unmoved and undisturbed. Illusions leave its perfectly unmoved and undisturbed. But specialness is not the truth in you. It can be thrown off balance. It cannot be thrown off balance by anything. The truth cannot be thrown off balance by anything, right? So here's another word. And this one you hear a lot on the evening news. And especially the local, but I've heard it many times on the national news as well. And that is outraged. So they're out there raging. and sometimes they are out there raging, right? So I look up the root of the words again, right? So outrage comes from outrage. And guess what outrage means? It means outer. What's the outer? The outer is the other. The not outer did it. The outer is responsible. Not me. It's outer. We're outraged at what's going on outside of me. Or that's what the teaching is anyhow, right? And the Course in Miracles says, teach no one he has hurt you, for if you do, you teach yourself that what is none of God has power over you. Teach no one that's in the chapter we're studying today. Teach no one that he has hurt you, for if you do, you teach yourself that what is not of God has power over you. Nothing has power over you. There's no reason to get upset or outraged or be offended by the insanity of the world. If the insanity of the world is causing any of this, then you are just as insane as the world is. This is an insane world, but do we want to join in the insanity of the world? We don't want to join in the insanity of the world. The Course is really helping us to get to an objective point of view. And from an objective point of view, things just are what they are. Now, sometimes it's a very little word. I have a little word example, and that word is bugged. I was doing a talk in Buffalo a few years ago, and it's fun when I travel around because I stay in different people's homes, and you get to meet some wonderful individuals this way. I stayed with a guy who was professor of physics at the University of Buffalo. And I loved the way this guy's mind worked because he was so excited about I could see him teaching in front of a blackboard because he would start talking about it and he'd go, oh, and then, like putting all the dots together, you could just see him teaching like this. Right? Well, he had this word that he kept using, and the word was, what bugs me is, oh, well, that's very interesting. He's got a little bug in there. It's like a little virus that got inside his psyche somewhere, and so he gets bugged by things, right? I would not normally have done this, but in his particular case, I decided that I think if I pointed out the bug to him, he wouldn't be off-ended. And I did, and he wasn't. I said, that's really interesting. Yes, I do that, don't I? He got it. I mean, he was able to look at it. See, the thing is to look at the stuff that we do that we don't even recognize that we're doing it. That's what the Course said. You don't even know you're doing this stuff. There's got to be something that stops you and enables you to look and watch and see what's going on. Here's to quote the Course. Watch your mind for scraps of fear, or you will be unable to ask me to do so. Now look, watch your mind for scraps, or you will be unable to ask me. You were asking the Holy Spirit to help us to be able to look at this stuff, right? All right, now the next category are things that you probably can't eliminate completely. I think the words I've used up to this point, you can eliminate these. Totally eliminate them, you'll feel much better. Some of the next words we'll probably have to use some of the time, but we can cut on the frequency. Now last month, this is a passage we read from chapter 13. In honesty, is it not harder for you to say, I love, than I hate? You associate love with weakness and hatred with strength. And your own real power seems to you as your real weakness. But the real strength is an I love. Not that I hate, but hate is easier to say. I hate whatever, often about something about ourselves. I hate to say this, you know. Well, don't say it. If you know what, why do you think you have to say this thing if you're going to hate to say it, right? Want to look at it. And fear and afraid are similar ones. Afraid it's going to rain this afternoon. Really? We're afraid it's going to rain this afternoon. Fear is in there. And fight. Fight is another one. Fighting against something. Another little set would be want, need, and have to have. Now you can't eliminate want, need, and have to have. You need to stop for gas, you need to stop for gas. You need to go to the grocery store, you need to go to the grocery store. That's just, those are... Byron Katie wrote a book called I Need Your Love. Is that true? Do we really need some of the things that we may say that we need? Do we need that? Okay. I'm going to tell you a little story. It's a true story about a woman named Susan Siegel. Did anybody ever hear of Susan Siegel? You got two. Okay, great. She wrote a wonderful little book called Collision with the Infinite. Right? She did get enlightened stepping off a bus. Right. Here, this is the exact one. So let me tell you about who Susan Siegel was. At the time this happened, she was a 27-year-old American woman married to a French doctor living in Paris. Okay? And she had an instantaneous experience of enlightenment. Now this is really, really, the chances of winning the Mega Million are much better. Okay. But this is what happened. This is from her book, Collision with the Infinite. I lifted my right foot to step into the bus and collided head-on with an invisible force that entered my awareness like a silently exploding stick of dynamite, blowing the door of my usual consciousness open and off its hinges. What I had previously called me was forcefully pushed out of its usual location inside me into a new location that was approximately a foot behind and to the left of my head. I was now behind my body looking out at the world without using the body's eyes. This is kind of like what gets described in some of the near-death experiences, except this is not a near-death experience. This is just something that just spontaneously happened. So what happened was that she had this incredible objectivity. And all of a sudden she found she had no wants and no needs and no anxieties and nothing. She went home, she tried to explain to her husband what had happened, but she couldn't quite really explain it to him. She continued to, she had a child, and to have her child and to take care of the house and to do things. But something had completely happened. And so she started going to different psychologists to try to get the psychologists to help her figure out what had happened. And they finally diagnosed her as having dissociative personality disorder. In other words, if you have no wants, and you have no needs, and you have no anxieties, there's something must be wrong with you. This is not normal. To have no wants or needs or anxieties or anything like that. Well, anyhow, to kind of finish her off her story a little bit, what happened was she left her husband. She came back to the United States. She went to, I think, the Institute for Transpersonal Psychology out in California. She got her Ph.D. in transpersonal psychology. She became a well-known therapist and kind of a mini guru. So she started getting a lot of people were coming to listening to her lectures. And then she kind of lost it. She started wandering around on the beaches in California. She couldn't talk anymore. She couldn't teach anymore. And she was diagnosed with a very rapidly developing brain tumor. And 3 months later, she was gone. So it's sort of a, but you might want to get her book. It's only like 100 pages long. It's a really interesting called Collision with the Infinite. It's not something you'd get at Amazon.
I just want to interject, like we say she lost it, right? So when I see people around, there's a lot of people in my neighborhood, right, this neighborhood. and they're you know, they have a psychosis of some kind.
Right.
And they talk to themselves, but I can talk to them all the time. I have a lot of people I can talk to, some no threat to them.
Right.
But I think they're seeing things that we don't see.
Right.
And they might be projecting in their own way, or they might be seeing other things. Like, I have an aunt, she has dementia and Alzheimer's. And she's talking about where mom and dad is. And she's like 19 years old. But I think they're going over. I mean, I think we judge, like we do all this work, and then you say, oh, they lost it. But maybe she didn't want to do this anymore. Maybe she was just in her mind.
Oh yeah, goodness
what
knows.
I'm saying is like, because this is what, you know, we have a lot of this. We always find a reason what's wrong with somebody, you know, with our own projections. So.
Right. Well, thank you. Right. You made me think about something that I'd like to share too, which is I used to have a church here in New York City along with Diane Burke. We were across from Carnegie Hall for 13 years. It was called Interfaith Fellowship. And I would get there early on Sunday mornings to see the volunteers were all, we literally, it was a piano recital hall. And we had church services there on Sunday morning, and then in the afternoon it was piano recitals. And I would get there, be sure everything was working, that all the volunteers were doing what they needed to do, and I would leave. And I would go across the street, not to Carnegie Hall, but to Carnegie Deli. And yeah, directly, right? Actually, I went to the corner with usually the other corner, but it doesn't matter. And I would look over my notes for the day's service. And one day I'm there, and there's a homeless guy sitting directly across from me at a U-shaped counter, talking out loud to himself. You know, homeless folks often talk out loud to themselves. And there were very few people around at the time, and he was talking so loudly that I thought if I get really quiet and I kind of listen, I think I could make out what he was saying. And I got it. I didn't get the whole thing. I got enough to know what was going on. And what was going on, it was that he was like practicing a speech that he was going to give to someone. But it was a defense speech. I couldn't help it. And it was like he was going to give the speech to somebody in authority, like a judge or a brother or a sister or a parent or something. But it was building a case. Do you ever do that? Yeah. Yeah. Driving around in your car, building the case, you know? What you're going to say when you get in front of so-and-so. Oh, he said that. Don't forget that. He's left. Got to get that pin now. You know. See, what happens with most of us, you know, we're more sane, right? So it just never gets to the tongue. It stays there. But with some homeless folks, it goes all the way to the tongue. And it comes out and it starts getting expression. But it's just an example of what's going on with a whole lot of us who just know how to keep our mouths shut more often, hopefully, than not. Amy?
I just have a story about that. I remember...
Oh, wait. Can we get a mic? Because otherwise it's just... I don't know either. Anybody got a mic?
Billy.
Billy's got a mic. Oh.
I thought I was supposed to take this.
You were. Well, it's either that or we don't, or you will not be heard.
Okay.
Right into it.
Okay. My father and I once had an argument. And I can't tell you now what it was about.
Good.
Or who was right and who was wrong. But I remember that 3 days later, I came out in the morning to go to the bathroom, and he was coming out of the bathroom, and he looked at me, he said, "And another thing." And I couldn't even remember what
Give it to That's a good illustration. It's in there. It's in the mind. You know, it's always all this. But that's what the Course means by the dreaming of the world. And the dreaming which keeps us from seeing because we're caught in our own story, right? A couple more little words. Another little word is but. Right? We want to get the but out of here. So the following is a quote. This is actually, remember, those of us who are over 60 or 70 or whatever, maybe remember a Phil Silvers show on the television? Okay, there's a few of us can remember that. Okay. Sergeant Bilko. All right, this is a quote from Sergeant Bilko, right? It goes like this. You said, but I've put my finger on the whole trouble. You're a but man. Don't say but. That little word but is a difference between success and failure. But you know how you're a really good kid. But you're a really good kid. Oh God, don't you hate it when the but comes? I mean, it's like it just has subtracted everything that got said before the but was erased. You know, so just if you, Ken once said that one of the most difficult things that a Course in Miracles student can learn is how to be able to disagree with somebody else without it being an attack. Well, how to disagree without it being an attack. And sometimes we have to do that. But how do you do that with love and diplomacy, etc.? Right? It can be done. Ken could do it. I know he could do it because he did it with me. He would have a way of confronting without attacking, which was David. Wait, we'll give David the mic. I'm sorry, but just I know from experiences.
Those of you who remember Est, Werner Erhard,
Yeah.
Werner Erhard used to teach that when you said but, you basically vitiated everything you said before that.
Yes, exactly.
And he advised us to say and.
And is much better.
And.
I know I find sometimes that when I'm doing Miracles Magazine, that I will get articles that just don't work or they're not well written or something. And so I will write back to the person and I will say whatever about their article that's a little positive. And I think it needs some more work. I think you need to kind of go back to, spend some more time on this, et cetera. But it's and work on it some more. It's very simple. It's not confronting in the same kind of a way.
And another thing.
There are always these exceptions, aren't there?
John, how about a couple other words called always and never?
Right. Well, there could be sometimes that those are appropriate.
Well, you're right.
Yeah. Actually, look at always and never in the Course, or nothing in the Course. The word nothing gets used an awful lot in the Course. All right, let me begin to wrap this up. By the way, with regard to the but thing, in that article by the fellow named John Dongas, who was doing the study on words, he says that sometimes but was a good word when it was being used to clarify or to deepen the meaning of something. You might want to throw it in. That's a very good reason to say but to further clarify this, okay? Then, of course, all the phrases that I could go into phrases. I'm not going to go into phrases, but makes me sick, can't stand it, pain in the butt, drives me crazy. That's interesting to say, drives me crazy. If something is really driving you crazy, really? It's driving you crazy? I want to start collecting phrases, I think. I heard one this week. It's always something. Right? Or, it's the way things work, right? And then there's another category that I won't go into, but weasel words. You know what weasel words are? Weasel words are the company is restructuring. Collateral damage. Friendly fire. Right. Many people say, etc. Right? Another word that we can probably, you can't eliminate, but you can cut back on, which especially in terms of the Course, is they. Right? I was in Atlanta doing a talk, and the next day I was going to another city, but my host asked me if I would drive him to the airport first before I went to my next city, and I said, sure, I got plenty of time. He wanted to get the channel on the radio that gave the best road reports on blockages to the airport so we could learn where. All right, so we're listening to this channel that there's a political commentator on the channel. And I will not mention Russ's name. And He kept, the them, who are they? There's no they is whoever is in opposition to the way you're thinking. That's who they are.
Exactly.
It's not like there's some body. It's just that there's other ways of thinking that doesn't work with my mind. So I'm going to cut those out. Right. All right. In closing, there is a concept in Buddhism called Mo Chao, developed by Bodhidharma, who is the legendary founder of Zen Buddhism. And what Mo Chao means, devise no words. Mo means serene or silent, and Chao means awareness. So we just have awareness. We just have silent awareness. And the silent awareness also is the peace of the mind. And then I will close with this. This is from, you've probably heard it. It's a Chinese little proverb thing, but it's really true. Be careful of your thoughts. We start with the thoughts. That's one of the core things the Course is saying. So be careful of your thoughts. Look at your thoughts. For your thoughts inspire your words. Be careful of your words because your words precede your actions. Be careful of your actions because your actions become your habits. Be careful of your habits because your habits build your character. Be careful of your character because your character decides your destiny. Let's take a break.